A shocking killing in the small town of Hart. A councilman now charged with his wife's murder.
New since 5 o'clock, 24-hour News 8's Ryan Takeo has talked with police about why they believe this happened, and he joins us live now. Ryan?
Sue, Brian, the lieutenant we talked to, said that this is a love triangle gone bad. We also confirmed through police that they are interviewing another woman, one they say the council member had a relationship with. We know Timothy Shannon and his wife Leanne were married 6 years and had 2 children. On December 29th, Tim Shannon called police. His story then was that his wife accidentally drowned in the bathtub. The county prosecutor told us both the public and those close to the couple started giving police tips, and the death investigation turned into a murder investigation.
The bathroom was silent. The warm water had gone cold. Her body lay beneath the surface, still, eyes closed, like she might wake up at any second. There were no signs of chaos, no overturned bottles, no broken glass, just a woman, young, vibrant, and devoted to her 2 children, dead in her own home.
911.
This is Tim Shannon. My wife passed out drunk in the bathtub and I think drowned.
How warm or cold is she?
Cold.
Cold. What's the water temperature?
Oh, I drained it.
You drained it?
The first thing I did.
Okay, is she breathing? Is she breathing?
No.
Okay, we'll get everybody over there for you, okay?
Her husband called 911 with a shaking voice saying he'd found her like that. He sobbed. He told the dispatcher he had tried CPR. He said he didn't know what happened. By the time responders arrived, his shirt was damp. His voice cracked as he repeated his story, one that at first no one had reason to question. She'd slipped, he said. An accident, a tragedy. But then came the bruising, the marks on her neck, the timeline that didn't add up. And the more questions investigators asked, the more uneasy everyone began to feel. Because if she truly had slipped, why was her phone found locked in the car? Why were her last messages unsent? And why did her husband Google something just hours before she died? Something that would later become the key to everything. Do you think he planned it? Or could this still be explained away? One thing's certain. The moment detectives took a closer look at the water, everything changed. If you're new to this channel, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and let us know in the comments where you're watching from. We'd love to hear from viewers around the world. Leanne Shannon was the kind of mother who never missed a Friday playgroup. She volunteered at her children's early childhood center, sat on the parent committee, and had recently taken on a role representing the program in the Muskegon Oceana Head Start policy group. To those around her, she was the embodiment of dedication, a woman who poured herself into her children's lives and education. Born in 1978, Leanne earned her bachelor's degree in early education from Spring Arbor College. She met Timothy Shannon in college, and they married in 2006. Together, they built a life in Hart, Michigan, raising their 2 young children, a boy and a girl, just 3 and 4 years old at the time of her death. Leanne was known for her warmth and commitment. Jody Munoz, director of early childhood programs at Hart Public Schools, described her as very involved in paying it forward and all about her kids. She was a constant presence at school events and deeply engaged in her children's development. To the outside world, the Shannons appeared to be a picture-perfect family. Timothy was a respected city councilman, and their home life seemed stable and loving. But beneath the surface, cracks were forming. Timothy had begun an affair with Jamie Hathaway, a 20-year-old nanny who lived with the family. Leanne had invited Jamie into their home, unaware of the betrayal that would unfold. When Timothy confessed the affair and expressed his desire for a divorce, Leanne was devastated. She struggled with depression and began drinking heavily. On December 28, 2012, Leanne reportedly purchased several bottles of alcohol. She often took baths when drinking, seeking solace in the warm water. That night, Timothy told her he wanted her to move out. The next morning, he called 911, claiming he found her unresponsive in the bathtub. Initially deemed an accidental drowning, suspicions grew as inconsistencies in Timothy's account emerged. Family members questioned the circumstances, prompting a deeper investigation. Eventually, Timothy confessed to holding Leanne under the water until she stopped struggling. Leanne's death left a void in the community. Her children lost not only their mother, but also their father, who was sentenced to prison for her murder. Friends and colleagues mourned the loss of a woman who had given so much to those around her. Have you ever known a couple who looked perfect on the outside, but turned out to be hiding something dark? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Timothy Shannon and Leanne Shannon's marriage began in 2006, rooted in shared values and mutual respect. Timothy, a Hart City Council member, and Leanne, a dedicated mother and community volunteer, appeared to have a stable family life. They welcomed 2 children and were active in their local community. In 2011, the Shannons opened their home to Jamie Hathaway, a 20-year-old woman in need of shelter. Leanne met Jamie through her preacher and saw an opportunity to help someone in need. Jamie became a live-in nanny, assisting with childcare and household duties. However, beneath the surface, the dynamics within the household began to shift. Timothy and Jamie developed a close relationship that eventually turned into a romantic affair. Their connection deepened over time, leading to plans for a future together. As Timothy's relationship with Jamie intensified, his marriage to Leanne deteriorated. He expressed a desire for divorce, which devastated Leanne. She struggled with depression and began consuming alcohol more heavily. On December 29, 2012, the night that Leanne Shannon was found dead in the bathtub was not like any other evening in the Shannon household. On the surface, it appeared to be a tragic accident, just another ordinary night. A wife lost the consequences of her own struggles. But as detectives pieced together the details, a much darker picture began to emerge, one that painted a chilling image of betrayal, deceit, and premeditation. This was no accident. This was a murder carefully orchestrated by the one person who should have protected Leanne most, her husband, Timothy Shannon. The evening began like many others. Leanne had spent the day caring for their children, managing the household, and trying to maintain the facade of a happy family. However, her marriage was far from perfect. As mentioned, Timothy had been growing distant, and the affair with their live-in nanny, Jamie Hathaway, was weighing heavily on Leanne. Still, she had no idea how close her husband was to acting on his desire to end their marriage and start a new life with Jamie. According to Timothy's initial account, he and Leanne had a quiet evening. She had been drinking earlier, which Timothy claimed contributed to her accident. At 11:48 p.m., he called 911. His voice, calm and composed, told the dispatcher that he had found his wife unresponsive in the bathtub. "She's not breathing. I think she drowned." He told them, his tone devoid of panic. He claimed that Leanne had gone into the bathroom after having a drink and, in her drunken state, had slipped under the water. But as investigators would soon learn, Timothy's story didn't add up. There were far too many inconsistencies in his account. For one, the timing of his call was suspicious. Why had it taken him so long to dial 911? Additionally, Timothy's calm demeanor stood in stark contrast to the situation. His wife, the mother of his children, was found dead in their bathroom, yet he showed no signs of distress or urgency. When authorities arrived at the Shannon home, they were met with a scene that seemed almost too tranquil. Leanne was lying in the bathtub, fully clothed, with water still running. The water itself was cold, and her body showed no signs of struggling. There were no signs of bruises or cuts, which would be expected in a violent confrontation. But something felt wrong, something that didn't match the narrative Timothy had provided. The police began to dig deeper. Investigators found that there was little evidence of an accident. Leanne had not drowned due to intoxication, as Timothy had claimed. There were no traces of alcohol in her system at the time of her death. What's more, forensic analysis revealed that her lungs were not filled with water, as would be expected in a drowning. Instead, they were relatively dry, suggesting that she had not been submerged for long, or perhaps not submerged at all. This raised a crucial question. If she hadn't drowned, what had caused her death? A deeper investigation into the scene revealed disturbing clues. There were no signs of a struggle, which seemed odd given the violent nature of the crime. But one key detail stood out. Leanne's hands were positioned unnaturally, as if she had been held in the water by force. This raised even more suspicion. It was as though someone had drowned her, deliberately, holding her under the water until her body stopped struggling. Further examination of the house revealed yet another clue that contradicted Timothy's story. The forensic team found traces of a struggle in the master bedroom, where Timothy had initially claimed everything had been calm. Leanne's clothing showed signs of being hastily removed, but there was no evidence of physical violence between the two. The absence of a struggle in the bathroom raised further doubts about the accidental drowning story. Had Timothy attempted to stage the scene? Had he planned the murder meticulously, hoping to make it look like an accident? As the investigation continued, disturbing details about the night began to surface. The most significant discovery was the timeline of events. The night of Leanne's death was also the night that Jamie Hathaway, the woman with whom Timothy had been having an affair, was supposed to move in. In fact, Jamie had already packed her things and was ready to move into the house. Was this a coincidence, or was it a calculated move on Timothy's part to rid himself of his wife and start a new life with Jamie? Evidence began to suggest the latter. The toxicology results showed that Leanne had traces of a drug in her system, a substance that Timothy had access to. It was clear that Timothy had used this to subdue her before drowning her. Flashbacks to earlier conversations between Timothy and Jamie revealed a disturbing dialogue. In one chilling exchange, Jamie told Timothy, "You think this is over? I'll make sure no one suspects a thing." Her words, though spoken in the heat of an affair, took on an entirely different meaning after the murder. Did Jamie know what Timothy was planning all along? Had she been complicit in the crime, or was she an unwitting accomplice, too caught up in the whirlwind romance to realize the depths of Timothy's deception? At that point in the investigation, the scene became clearer. The police were no longer looking at an accidental drowning. They were looking at a murder, carefully executed by someone who had spent months meticulously planning every detail. The forensic evidence pointed to premeditation. The drugging, the staged crime scene, the lies Timothy told about the evening's events. But there was one more crucial element that sealed his fate: his confession. Under intense interrogation, Timothy's calm demeanor crumbled. With each question, the facade he had built began to crack. Finally, he admitted to holding Leanne under the water. "She wouldn't stop struggling," he said, his voice breaking for the first time. "I couldn't do it any other way." That confession marked the end of the investigation and the beginning of a long legal battle. Timothy Shannon was arrested and charged with the murder of his wife Leanne. The case not only revealed the darkness hiding behind a seemingly perfect family, but also the chilling extent to which a man would go to escape the consequences of his actions. What had started as a seemingly tragic accident ended in a courtroom, with Timothy Shannon being held accountable for the brutal and premeditated murder of his wife. As the case unfolded, the truth about the Shannon family's picture-perfect life became clear. The marriage, built on lies and betrayal, was shattered forever. And the tragedy of Leanne's death would haunt those who knew her for the rest of their lives. The night of the murder was not just the end of Leanne Shannon's life. It was the unraveling of a carefully constructed illusion. And the man who had once vowed to protect her was revealed to be the one who had taken it all away. The chilling events of the murder had left the town in a state of disbelief. But the day the husband was arrested, the real shock set in. The news spread like wildfire, with many struggling to understand how a man who had once seemed loving and devoted could be capable of such a heinous act. In the early hours of the morning, law enforcement stormed the couple's home. The husband, who had been a prominent figure in the community, stood frozen as officers placed him under arrest. His expression was unreadable, a mix of confusion, anger, and perhaps a hint of fear. It was almost as if he couldn't quite grasp the magnitude of the situation. As the handcuffs clicked into place, he didn't resist. He didn't shout in protest, nor did he plead for his innocence. His demeanor was eerily calm, the weight of the crime slowly sinking in. The arrest was the culmination of weeks of investigation, mounting evidence and growing suspicion. The police had gathered forensic evidence that tied him to the scene of the crime, and there was no escaping the damning proof. It was a cold, calculated act. The murder had been planned, meticulously carried out with a chilling efficiency that disturbed even the most seasoned detectives. The victim had been taken by surprise, but the perpetrator seemed to have no remorse for the life he had just ended. As the husband was led away in handcuffs, the press swarmed, cameras flashing, and reporters clamoring for any tidbit of information. The community, who had once seen him as a loving spouse and father, now regarded him with horror. The media's portrayal was ruthless. It painted a portrait of a man who had betrayed not just his wife, but the very essence of trust that had bound their lives together. Yet, despite the growing chorus of condemnation, the husband remained oddly silent. His face was void of emotion, his eyes vacant as if he had already accepted his fate, or perhaps had grown numb to it. The arrest set the stage for the courtroom drama that would unfold in the coming months. When the trial began, the first bombshell came not from the defense, but from the prosecution. The husband, who had initially tried to paint himself as a victim of circumstance, was exposed for what he truly was, a man who had carefully orchestrated his wife's death. The evidence against him was damning. Forensic experts testified that the wounds inflicted on the victim were consistent with someone who had planned and executed the act in cold blood. The manner in which the crime had been carried out, a brutal and calculated attack, left little room for doubt. The husband had not acted in the heat of passion. This was a deliberate execution. One of the most shocking revelations came when the prosecution presented evidence of life insurance policies taken out on his wife shortly before her death. The policies, totaling a substantial sum, were beneficiaries solely to him. The husband's motive, it seemed, was financial gain. The life insurance payout would secure his future, and with his wife out of the picture, he could move forward with his life without the burden of her presence. As the prosecutor laid out the evidence,
with depression,
it became clear that this was not just a crime of passion, but one motivated by greed and an insidious desire for wealth.
Tim Shannon ultimately
But there was
decided
more.
he wanted
In
to
the
be
course
with
of the
younger
investigation,
woman.
it was revealed that the husband had been having multiple affairs. The secret relationships were uncovered through phone records, text messages, and testimonies from his mistresses. The facade of the devoted husband had been a lie from the beginning. He had been living a double life, juggling his marriage with a series of illicit liaisons. His wife, it appeared, was no longer someone he loved or even cared for. She had become an obstacle, someone to be disposed of for the sake of his own desires. Yet, the most disturbing detail came not from the evidence, but from the husband's behavior in court. Throughout the trial, he remained eerily detached. He showed no remorse for his actions, no sign of guilt. His responses were mechanical, as if he were simply going through the motions of defending himself. Even when the victim's family gave their impact statements, describing the devastation they had endured, the husband sat in silence, his face unreadable. There was no hint of sorrow, no acknowledgement of the pain he had caused. His lack of empathy was chilling, and many in the courtroom felt a deep sense of outrage. How could someone who had destroyed so many lives show no emotion? How could he remain so cold? Lee Shannon's family took the stand, delivering gut-wrenching statements about their lost loved one. The victim's sister spoke first, her voice trembling with grief. She described how her sister had been a loving, caring person, someone who would have done anything for her family. She was more than a sister, she said, her words breaking with emotion. She was my best friend. I don't understand how anyone could do this to her. She didn't deserve this. Tears streamed down her face as she remembered her sister's warm smile and kind heart. The courtroom was silent, the weight of her words heavy in the air. Lee Shannon's parents also gave emotional statements, recounting their shock and disbelief upon learning of their daughter's death. They spoke of the void left in their lives, a void that could never be filled. The victim's mother described the pain of losing her only child, how she would never get to see her grow old or experience the joys of becoming a mother herself. The victim's father, a man known for his stoic demeanor, struggled to hold back tears as he said, "There are no words for the emptiness we feel. This man took our daughter from us and will never get her back." As the trial drew to a close, The defense tried to argue that the husband's actions were the result of a momentary lapse in judgment, an outburst of rage brought on by personal issues. But the prosecution's case had been airtight, and the jury saw through the defense's flimsy arguments. The deliberations were brief, and when the verdict was read aloud, the room fell into stunned silence. The husband was found guilty of first-degree murder. The sentencing was swift, and the judge, who had seen many cases in his career, was particularly stern in his remarks. "You took a life for your own selfish gain," the judge said, his voice cold and firm. "You have shown no remorse for your actions, and you have destroyed the lives of countless people in the process. You will spend the rest of your life in prison." The final sentence was life in prison without the possibility of parole. The husband's face remained impassive as the judge issued the ruling, but inside he must have realized that his life, as he had known it, was over. For the victim's family, the sentence provided some measure of closure, though it would never bring back their loved one. What punishment do you think he deserved? Let us know in the comments. Was justice served in this case? In the wake of the horrific murder, the lives of everyone involved were irreparably altered. The two children, once the heart of a seemingly happy family, were left to navigate a world without their mother, a world forever scarred by their father's actions. The trauma of losing a parent to such violence is something no child should ever endure, and the emotional scars would linger for years to come. The children, a son and daughter, were placed into the custody of their maternal grandparents, who had already been deeply affected by the loss of their daughter. They had always been a close-knit family, but the murder tore through their lives like a relentless storm. The grandparents, while loving and devoted, struggled to fill the void left by the children's mother. They did their best to provide a stable environment, but the absence of their daughter's warmth and presence weighed heavily on them. The children, though surrounded by family, faced an uphill battle with their grief, each of them in their own way. The son, who had been particularly close to his mother, found solace in his schoolwork but became withdrawn, showing signs of anxiety and depression that would require years of therapy to address. The daughter, younger and more fragile emotionally, became clingy and fearful, often waking up in the middle of the night crying for her mother. Both children struggled to understand the tragedy that had unfolded before them, and the fact that their father was the one responsible for their mother's death only deepened their confusion and pain. In the weeks following the trial, there were numerous memorial services and vigils held in honor of the wife, a woman whose life had been tragically cut short. Her family and friends came together to celebrate her memory, sharing stories of her kindness, her dedication to her children, and her deep love for her community. She was remembered as a woman who had always put others before herself, someone who had given so much and asked for so little in return. Her life had been a testament to love, family, and sacrifice. A memorial plaque was erected in her honor at the local park, a place she had frequented with her children before the tragedy. The inscription read, "In loving memory of a mother, daughter, and friend who gave selflessly to all who knew her." It was a small gesture, but one that provided a sense of peace to her family and friends. The community, too, began to rally around the children, offering support and compassion in the wake of the tragedy. It was clear that the wife had left an indelible mark on everyone she encountered, and her memory would live on in the hearts of those who loved her. Her best friend, who had been devastated by the loss, said in a public memorial, "She was the kind of person who made you feel like everything was going to be okay, no matter how hard life got. The world lost a bright light when we lost her, and I will never stop loving her or remembering everything she gave to all of us. She was more than just a friend. She was family." These words were echoed by others who had known her, each reflecting on her love, warmth, and the joy she had brought into their lives. The emotional legacy left behind by the wife's death was profound. Her children would grow up with the memory of a mother who had been taken too soon, her life stolen by the very person who should have protected her. They would never get to share those milestones with her, the graduations, weddings, and the eventual birth of grandchildren. The loss of a mother is something no amount of time can truly heal, And for these children, the pain of growing up without her would be a shadow that followed them for the rest of their lives. What remained, however, was the wife's legacy of kindness, her unwavering love for her family, and the quiet strength she had shown throughout her life. She had touched so many hearts, and even in her absence, her impact remained. The memorial plaque, the kind words spoken by those who loved her, and the stories shared in her memory were a reminder that while her life was tragically cut short, her spirit would live on through the people she had touched. Behind every smiling face, there may lie a world of secrets. The tragedy we've just recounted is a chilling reminder that domestic abuse can often remain hidden in plain sight. To those on the outside, the couple may have appeared like any other, happy, in love with a family they seemed to cherish. But in the darkness of their home, behind closed doors, the truth was far more sinister. The wife's death wasn't the result of a sudden outburst, but rather the culmination of years of hidden pain, manipulation, and control. Domestic abuse doesn't always present itself in the dramatic ways we often imagine. It doesn't always leave bruises that can be seen by others, and sometimes it isn't loud or overt. In this case, it was quiet, slow, and insidious, just as many victims experience. The wife may have hoped for change or believed that things would improve. She may have convinced herself that the love they shared was enough to make the relationship work. The reality is that love, when twisted by manipulation and control, can become toxic and dangerous. The warning signs of abuse are often subtle, woven into the fabric of everyday interactions. Isolating the victim from friends and family, controlling finances, gaslighting to create confusion, or even pretending to be the perfect partner while secretly fostering an atmosphere of fear. These signs may be brushed aside or misunderstood by those on the outside looking in. And this case serves as a reminder of just how vital it is to pay attention to the whispers of distress that may not be immediately apparent. People may be too embarrassed or afraid to speak out, but it is crucial that we, as a community, learn to recognize and respond to these signals. When love becomes toxic, it takes a psychological toll that's difficult to escape. The danger of manipulation can make a person doubt their own worth and sense of reality, causing them to stay in relationships that are unhealthy or unsafe. What may begin as something subtle, perhaps a hurtful comment or controlling behavior, can slowly evolve into something more dangerous. It's important to understand that this isn't just about physical violence. It's about emotional, psychological, and mental control, all of which can be just as harmful, if not more so. If you or someone you know feels unsafe in their relationship, don't stay silent. Speak up. Help is out there. What warning signs do you think were missed in this case? Share your thoughts below.